Interest in Elizabeth I and her rule from 1558 to 1603 appears boundless, often tinged with deep admiration. Under her leadership, tolerance found advocacy, religion achieved equilibrium, seas were charted, an empire was forged, and a small nation defended itself against formidable adversaries, discovering its voice and purpose in the process. Her reign seemed to impart a profound understanding of the essence of the country and its significance. Elizabeth's era cultivated a sense of national identity previously elusive, and she, in turn, epitomized the nation's finest attributes: bravery, self-reliance, eccentricity, humor, unpredictability, and pragmatism when reason prevailed. Yet, not all who lived through the Elizabethan age shared this rosy view of it as a golden era. So, let's explore the dark side of Elizabethan England. Before we start, please support my channel by clicking like and subscribe buttons. Social breakdown. The harvests of 1594 and 1595 were poor, but 1596 was catastrophic, causing grain prices to soar to their highest levels of the 16th century, with dire consequences for thousands. This crisis is often overlooked in popular accounts of Elizabeth I's reign. Yet it offers a valuable perspective on the daily lives of ordinary people in the 16th century, far removed from the opulence of the Virgin Queen's court, and enhances our understanding of how the regime functioned. At the core of the problems facing Elizabethan England was the challenge of feeding its growing population. In 1500, England had about 2.5 million people. By 1650, that number had more than doubled to over 5 million, outstripping the economy's capacity to support it. This was particularly evident in two ways. First, grain prices rose disproportionately. While the population doubled, the cost of grains such as wheat, rye, barley, and oats increased sixfold. This had severe implications, since a large and increasing portion of the population relied on purchasing bread or bread grain from the market. Second, real wages, the purchasing power of a day's earnings, did not keep pace with rising prices. Whereas grain prices rose sixfold, real wages barely doubled. Furthermore, the abundance of laborers meant that finding work, even at lower wages, became increasingly difficult. Although few people earned wages in the modern sense, most of the poor depended on waged work for part of their income. The declining purchasing power of real wages pushed many into acute poverty. Consequently, the Elizabethan era saw the emergence of widespread poverty. By the 1590s, the situation for the poor and labouring classes was dire even under normal conditions. Harvest failures exacerbated this, as the steady increase in grain prices was punctuated by years of scarcity, with 1594 to 97 being particularly notorious for the suffering they caused. For a prosperous yeoman farmer with surplus grain, bad harvests could be beneficial. They had enough grain to feed their family and profited from higher market prices. However, middling peasants, or husbandmen, were severely affected by harvest failures. Families in this category struggled to maintain their status until mounting debts or personal disasters pushed them into the ranks of the labouring poor. By 1600, many villages in the South and Midlands were becoming polarised between a wealthy class of yeoman farmers and a growing number of impoverished people. London also suffered greatly. In an average year, burials slightly outnumbered baptisms, with the city's population growth driven largely by immigration. However, 1597 was far from average. That year, burials outnumbered baptisms by about 2 to 1, with the seasonal pattern of burials indicating famine as the cause. Warfare. The social upheaval triggered by the poor harvests of the 1590s was compounded by ongoing warfare. England found itself in a constant state of conflict from 1585 until Elizabeth's passing in 1603, participating in various theatres, including the Netherlands in support of the Dutch revolt, Normandy and Brittany backing French Protestants amidst religious wars, naval skirmishes against the Spanish, and the enduring struggle in Ireland. Warfare exacted a heavy toll, with the government expending £5.5 million between 1585 and 1603, a significant portion funded by taxpayers. Despite these expenditures, military endeavours yielded limited success and necessitated the mobilisation of sizable armies. Notably, Kent, a strategically vital county, provided 6,000 troops from its population of 130,000 between 1591 and 1602. Towns hosting concentrations of troops experienced notable unrest. Instances such as the mutinies of soldiers at Chester, the primary embarkation point for Ireland in 1594, 1596, and 1600 underscored the tension. Martial law was enforced in Chester in 1594 to quell violence among the 1,500 soldiers billeted in the vicinity, resulting in the execution of 3 alleged instigators. In 1598, 300 Londoners en route to Ireland for military duty mutinied in Towcester, establishing their leadership and seizing control of the town. Typically recruited from the fringes of society, soldiers of the late 16th century were hardened by their experiences, contributing to a cycle where returning soldiers often descended into vagrancy and criminality. Crime. Theft became a prevalent means of survival during this period. Crime records from Essex, Hertfordshire, Kent, Surrey, and Sussex indicate a significant increase in property offences, larceny, burglary, housebreaking, and robbery, from an annual average of about 250 in the early 1590s to roughly 430 in 1598. Desperation drove many of the poor to steal, despite the capital nature of most property crimes. In fact, records show that just over 100 individuals were executed for such offences in these 5 counties in 1598. Another response to soaring grain prices was a series of grain riots across southern England. Initially, these riots resembled demonstrations, aimed primarily at controlling local market prices or preventing grain from being exported out of the area. There is little evidence to suggest that these rioters sought broader social revolution. The pressures of the crisis led to the creation of a lasting legacy, the nearly comprehensive Poor Law Act of 1598, followed by additional legislation in 1601. Although less dramatic than Francis Drake's circumnavigation or the defeat of the Spanish Armada, this legislation stands as one of the defining achievements of Elizabeth's reign. The 2 acts established a nationally legislated but locally administered system of poor relief, more advanced than anything previously existing in a country of England's size. These laws, arguably the most significant legacy of the celebrated Elizabethan age, were inspired by the dire circumstances caused by the harvest failures of 1594 to 1597. In a sense, the poor, who during those years resorted to theft, fell into vagrancy, rioted, or were charged with seditious speech, had accomplished something significant after all. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. Please do not forget to support my channel by clicking like and subscribe buttons.